Okay, hey there everybody, welcome back. So this is lecture 11 on the evaluation of life and other non-monetary benefits, part 2. Okay. So in this video we're going to be discussing a couple methods for estimating prices in the absence of normal markets. Okay, so how do we find that price? And this has applications to the issue in this lecture, that is valuation of non-monetary benefits in life, but it has widespread application across a wide number of areas in economics and indeed even other fields as well. So the first one of those that we're going to talk about here is the idea of contingent valuation. Contingent valuation is a method used by economists to attempt to estimate demand curves for things that wouldn't otherwise have demand curves. So for example, what is the value of cleaner air, or what is the value for a pristine natural environment? And so the process in doing those studies, by the way, both the studies we're going to use statistics and econometric techniques, particularly regression analysis. But you're going to ask individuals how much a particular benefit would be worth to them. Okay, so for example, we might ask them, how much would you pay to go to this type of beach? And then we might again ask them, how much would you be willing to pay to go to this type of beach? And then considering the differences in willingness to pay between the not so clean and pristine beach and the pristine beach gives us some idea about what is consumer willingness to pay for a clean natural environment, in this case a beach. Now in this example I've just shown a couple pictures, right? Generally you do more than that. You may also give them a survey if pictures aren't available. So for example, if you're asking people about what it's worth to fix global warming, there's not a lot of pictures, right? You might do a survey. Okay, and then again using regression analysis, particularly logistic regression. If you're interested more in that, see my 2 videos on logistic regression. Using logistic regression, we can come up with an estimate of a demand curve for willingness to, in this case, mitigate pollution of one sort or another, okay, or a variety of other things, including, for example, mitigating loss of life. Okay, a second approach that we can use to estimate values of things where there is no clear market is something called hedonic analysis. Okay, and hedonic analysis is a little different from contingent valuation, which we just mentioned. With hedonic analysis, you use that when you do have some prices, but they're maybe not the prices of the things that you're considering. So for example, we may ask the question, how much is it worth for a house to be on a lake? Or if the lake were damaged in some way, shape, or form, what's that worth by environmental damage or otherwise? Okay, how much does that damage the homeowner? And what we would do then, because of course there's no prices for the lake itself, but there are prices for the homes that are located around the lake. So what we may do is we may look at market data for, say, home sales. So we may look at sales of 3-bedroom homes that are next to a lake, like this one, versus similar 3-bedroom homes that are not near the lake, like this one. Now those are both examples of sort of standard northern Wisconsin type looking homes. Okay, now, and of course I'm oversimplifying the process. When we would do this work, we would look at hundreds, if not thousands, or even tens of thousands of home sales, homes that are near lakes or on lakes or not away from lakes, and from this get an idea about how much the marginal value of that lake is. And to be clear, so if you took the exact home, right, that was on a lake and moved it away from the lake, how much market value would it lose? Okay, this is hedonic analysis. It's another tool that we use to estimate values of things when there is no clear market. Now, how common is this? Well, both these methods are quite common. and you can find thousands, maybe tens of thousands of examples of each. Certainly thousands of published papers using either method, and so that's quite common method to use to estimate these things. A third way in which we can estimate these, it's somewhat less common, is known as a travel cost approach. And what we might do there is we might look, okay, well, let's say we have a destination like, say, Niagara Falls. I think everybody knows that one, or maybe the Great Wall of China or something like that. How much are people willing to pay to get to the Great Wall of China and then to see it, get back home, of course. Okay, and that gives us some idea about what their willingness to pay for that thing to exist is. Okay. This is more commonly used in environmental economics, but certainly has applications here. So, for example, we may, be looking to make some land public or something like that, and we want to know sort of what is the perceived benefit from the public to making this land public, and that might be a valid approach in that case. But all three of these methods, contingent valuation, hedonic analysis, travel cost methods, are ways in which we estimate prices when we don't otherwise have prices. Okay. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, right, well, these don't sound very exact, right? Well, they actually are to different degrees, right? So contingent valuation models, well, let's start from the most accurate to maybe the least. Hedonic models can be quite accurate if they're well set up and structured, because they're using actual market values, right? There's nothing estimated about it, but why you're using the hedonic model is because there's no market values for this particular thing that you're interested in, say clean air or clean water, or obviously there's no price on there's no market price for human life for obvious reasons, right? But there are prices on other things that are adjacent to those. So there are houses priced next to lakes, right? There's houses in places that have poor air quality and have good air quality. There's houses or other things, right, in places where it's dangerous to human life, and others where it's quite safe. And so you can use these sort of adjacent market values to get an idea for what the actual value would be in those cases. Contingent valuation models also can be pretty accurate depending upon how they're set up. Again, there's a wide literature on how to do these things right, and what things to avoid. But they can be reasonably accurate when they're done right. They do tend to overestimate a little bit by and large. But if you have an idea about how much the overestimation is, then of course you can factor that in and correct, right? Okay, now once you've used one of these methods, like contingent valuation or hedonic analysis or whatever, right, you're arriving at some notion of perceived benefits or losses depending upon which direction you're moving. Okay, if you have those perceived benefits, then of course those don't tell you whether you should do a thing or not, whether the regulation is appropriate or not. That gives you one half of the equation, as it were. Okay, on the other side, you have to sort of figure out what the costs are, right? So, for example, let's say we have a lake that's been damaged by pollution. Should we issue regulation that will require it to be cleared up? Well, in some cases it may make sense. If, say, we did a hedonic analysis and we have an estimate of how people would value that cleaned up lake. In some cases it may make sense to go ahead and clean it up, whereas in others it may not. Okay. Sometimes, of course, perceived environmental damages is unavoidable. One problem we have around here in Wisconsin is a lot of times the water can be very brown looking and murky. That is, you can't see through it very well, and people often perceive that as damage or pollution, when in fact it's the nature of the soil that the lake is situated on. And so, of course, without replacing all the soil that's underneath the lake and around the lake and everywhere else, you can't fix that, right? So that's in it. That's where the cost would be insurmountable, right? And in other cases, it can be very simple things like taking a little bit greater care with things like fertilizers near the lake, right? So if people have their lawns running right up to the lake, maybe if you can just prohibit use of fertilizer within a certain distance of the lake, you can often significantly improve the water quality. All right, that's it for this one, part 2 of lecture 11. I'll put a link to part 1 in the description below. I hope you've enjoyed this lecture and found it useful. If you would like more on either contingent valuation or hedonic analysis, I'd be happy to put together a separate video on that if there's demand for it. Okay, let me know in the comments. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good day. Bye.